Are you fond of sports? Have you ever witnessed the heat of the game intensify when a player breaks the rules? Whether it is football or national basketball games, every game has authority, and every player who goes against it faces the consequences. An essential subject of law is sports law. It may include everything, including contracts, employment law, competition law, and tort law. Here, we showcase some of the most intriguing sports law cases. Firstly, did you see when Ben Collett's leg was broken in a careless tackle by a Middlesbrough player, costing him his football contract? Do you know football also contains sports laws? So what can happen if you go against them? Football is an exciting game, but what happens when a player goes against the rules of the game? A yellow card is shown, but in Ben Collett's football game, there's more to the story than just a penalty. Sir Alex Ferguson claimed that Collett, a 23-year-old young and energetic player, had an excellent chance of becoming a full-time professional if he hadn't been hurt during a hearing in Manchester. Collett signed youth contracts and enrolled in United's youth program at the age of 9. He later played for the club's 2003 FA Youth Cup winning squad. But in May 2003, when he was 18 years old and playing for the reserves for the first time, Middlesbrough's Gary Smith tackled him and broke his right leg in 2 places. Smith and the team accepted responsibility for the negligent tackle, and the judge's job was to determine how much money Collett should get from Middlesbrough's insurance company. Collett successfully sued Middlesbrough for loss of earnings as a football player and, in the future, as a manager or coach when it was determined that they were responsible for their employees' activities. As a result, he was rewarded more than £4.3 million, which is enough for a lifetime. Up next, how is a rugby referee held liable? It's time to check the rules and regulations of a match before jumping into play. In October 1991, Ben Smolden, now 21 years old and a person with tetraplegia, was injured while playing hooker in a match between Sutton Coldfield and Burton-on-Trent Colts. He filed a lawsuit for $1 million in damages, claiming Burton prop forward Thomas Whitworth of collapsing the scrum and referee Michael Nolan of failing to maintain sufficient control. The game, which had young and inexperienced players, had a regulation explicitly intended to reduce the chance of injury, which was the basis for the referee's liability. The rule's main goal was to make sure that a scrum was formed with some stability, reducing the likelihood that it would collapse. A reconsideration of legal liability insurance coverage for referees and affiliated sporting clubs may be warranted in light of decisions like this. Up next, why was Oscar Pistorius kept from running in the Olympics? Oscar Pistorius is a wonderful athlete who runs like a cheetah in any Olympic race, but the tragedy is that Oscar Pistorius, who runs with artificial carbon fiber limbs because of his disability, was prohibited from competing with able-bodied athletes by the IAAF because he had an unfair advantage over them. Pistorius filed an appeal with the CAS, the highest sporting tribunal in the world, to overturn an IAAF decision from January 14th that barred him from competing. The IAAF claimed his mechanical advantage due to his carbon fiber blades. Despite exceeding the Olympic qualifying time of 45.55 seconds, Pistorius's 400-meter Paralympic world record time of 46.56 seconds falls short. He has claimed that the appeals process has interfered with his training. However, South African selectors can still be included in the Olympic 1600-meter relay team, even if he doesn't achieve the qualifying time. Pistorius could go to Beijing as a substitute and wouldn't need to meet the qualifying standard. The relay team can be made up of 6 runners. Additionally, Pistorius plans to take part in the Paralympic Games in Beijing from September 6th to 17th. Additionally, Pistorius was then free to focus on making the 2012 London Olympics. Pistorius was able to compete against healthy competitors during the Olympic qualification rounds for Beijing after the International Association of Athletics Federation's ban on the 21-year-old South African competing against healthy competitors was successfully overturned by the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Next, how is there a lawsuit over walking and golf? Usually, golf is mainly played by older people. It is a much more accessible sport for them as they don't have to walk much, and it's not a fundamental part of golf. You can easily travel in a golf cart between the holes. Imagine you are playing golf. You may need a golf cart to travel between the holes, but the club refuses to give you one. You wouldn't go on walking in the field in the scorching heat, right? So what would you do next? You can appeal a court case regarding this club's misbehavior in sports law. If you're fond of golf, you might be aware of using a golf cart on the field. A case related to the PGA Club, also known as Professional Golfers Association, and Martin was one of the most closely followed health law decisions made by the Supreme Court in sports law. Professional golfer Casey Martin, who was denied the use of a golf cart while competing on the PGA Tour in 2000, launched a lawsuit against the organization. In this case, a professional golfer with a cardiovascular disorder wanted to use a golf cart to travel between holes on the Professional Golfers Association PGA Tour. The PGA Tour claimed he was unable to, but according to the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, the Supreme Court ruled that he could. Martin won the case in court against PGA. Many people, especially avid golfers or so-called purists of the sport, strongly disagreed with the Supreme Court's decision. In fact, a study conducted by GolfDigest.com is reported in the September 1, 2001 issue of Golf Digest. Do you agree with the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling regarding Casey Martin, as stated in the question? Most respondents, 52%, were in disagreement. Only 47% of respondents stated they approved of the choice. This caused disputes and an uproar between people who weren't happy with the decision. Coming right up, how did a headbutt in soccer cause someone to go to jail? Duncan Ferguson headbutted another player, Smith, in a 1996 Scottish Premier League football match. Ferguson received a red card and was removed from the game. The wounded athlete had a fractured nose but no additional injuries, and he chose not to pursue the claim in civil court. But the problem was not resolved. A criminal court found Duncan Ferguson guilty of grievous bodily harm and sentenced him to 6 months in prison for his behavior on the field of play after the game's on-duty police filed a GBH complaint against him. In order to defend himself, Ferguson contended that Smith had been frustrating him throughout the game, building up to a headbutt. Smith testified in court as a witness for the accused, claiming that he was teasing Ferguson the entire time the two of them played, that what occurred to him that day was typical in soccer, and that it had previously happened to him as well. Ferguson, a current international player, pleaded with Scotland's Football Association to help him avoid going to jail by arguing that because they had already given him a 12-match suspension, he had already been punished for his crime on the field. The governing body of football, though, declined to assist Ferguson. Lastly, what happened with the income fraud case against one of the finest British jockeys who won the Derby 9 times? Lester Piggott, a former champion jockey, passed away in Switzerland, although when word of his passing spread, the nostalgia-filled obituaries caused a few regretful smiles among seasoned tax advisors. Younger readers might not be familiar with another less savory part of the jockey's life story: the 366 days Piggott spent in prison for tax cheating in the late 1980s. While the paper celebrated his 4,500-plus triumphs in flat racing, the exact number of which is difficult to confirm, the Inland Revenue filed charges against Piggott in 1987 for fraud totaling £3.2 million, which at the time was the largest case of personal tax evasion in history. According to Stephen Perryman of the ATT's research of high-profile tax evasion cases, Piggott hid his gains from the tax authorities by depositing them into bank accounts in Switzerland, the Bahamas, Singapore, and the Cayman. The prosecution claimed that Piggott made fraudulent declarations during 3 subsequent probes into his tax problems between 1970 and 1985, according to a joint customs/revenue inquiry. The particular sums included failing to disclose £1.36 million in riding income during that time and an additional £1.0 million from bloodstock operations, according to the BBC News Archive. The judge sentenced Piggott to 3 years in prison, noting that he had deceived his own accountants till the matter was pushed out of view. After serving his 1 year and 1 day sentence, he returned to the course and added to his record of victories 2 years later. So the next time you play any sport, make sure you have an intelligent sports lawyer, because the field of sports law is forever evolving. That's all for today, guys. All the latest news about sports law is summed up for you guys. Do consider clicking the like button and subscribing to this channel. Make sure you hit the notification bell so that you never miss out on any hot news, and stay aware of the events going on in the world. Thanks for watching.